Good morning, Dan and Amy. So today is the much-discussed race seminar day at New Trier High School. We've talked about it for the last several weeks. Publication I started called NorthCookNews.com has written about it.
It's actually called New Trier Civil Rights Day.
Okay.
That's the official.
That's my handle on it.
Okay.
It has bubbled up to become a national story. Peter Berkowitz, a scholar at the Hoover Institution, opined on it in the Wall Street Journal last week. And two New Trier parents were featured on Michael Smerconish's show on CNN this past weekend. One of them, African-American parent, Tony Duncan, whose kids are Trevians, had this to say in discussing his opposition to the seminar day as currently constituted. And that phrase, as currently constituted, is the key one.
First off, you'll be hard-pressed to find anybody who actually is against seminar day. What it is that most are against is the politicizing of a very nonpartisan issue. Racial equality is something that should not be left or right. It should be something that we approach for one simple value, and that is access to equal education and economic opportunities. So that is what I think is really missing from this seminar, is that we need to get away from the Band-Aid and start looking at an opportunity to make a real cure.
And another African-American parent of a New Trier student, Robert Blackwell, has also weighed in on this seminar, as we've previously discussed on this show, opposing it in its current construction, saying, among other things, in a post that was distributed via social media, there should be some sessions on what economic systems deliver the best results in taking people from poverty to prosperity. Those sessions could involve presenters with some background in history and economics with varying viewpoints on how to accomplish those goals. He went on to say about a particular session in the seminar day, Blackonomics 101, quote, "I would never let my daughter listen to that or let anyone give her the impression that it is okay for her to speak like that or that being black means that it is acceptable to be vulgar in order to express yourself," said Robert Blackwell. For an opposing viewpoint on the topic, we're pleased to be joined by Paul Traynor, who is also a New Trier parent, the father of a sophomore at New Trier High School, as well as an incoming freshman at New Trier. Paul, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dan. Nice to be here.
And so why are Robert and Tony wrong?
I don't know that they're wrong so much as misinformed, and I think they even they have a right to their opinion, whatever it is. I just don't agree with it, and 99% of the township doesn't either.
Well, I don't know what the surveying is, but you say they're misinformed, so explain how they're misinformed.
Well, one of the things that's been so confusing to us, I guess, is as you said, you've been talking about this quite a bit, and it feels like most of the controversy for those of us who live in New Trier has been kind of in this room much more so than it's been anywhere in our community. So, one of the things like with Robert Blackwell, for instance, he originally made a post on a Facebook group that you've since joined that's to talk about this locally. And, he said that, Black Lives Matter are going to come and speak. And that was incorrect. So I went on WTTW the other night. I mistakenly said that. And then he corrected me, and I said, "Oh, that's great." But the problem is that it's still the headline for the blog post you lifted and called an op-ed on North Cook News, and it's still on the parentsofnewtrier.org website. So there's a lot of false information out there that, unfortunately, it seems like, you guys are really helping to kind of put out there.
No, but Black Lives Matter, so they are not speaking today?
No, not at all. Not at all.
But there's no conservative voice
there
being
is,
heard.
sure.
Okay, what's the conservative voice
seminar,
today?
That seminar, I believe, is called Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, right? So it's a discussion about which of those things has the right, kind of take on it, and what are the factors involved. And, another one I think that's really a good one to talk about is the Kaepernick one, which I know you've mentioned a couple times. Is he a hero or is he, anti-American or a villain? Right. And I think that the way that that's constructed is that what the kids do is they take their position. So if you're supporting Kaepernick, you're supposed to go in and take the other side. If you're against Kaepernick and think he's un-American, you're supposed to go in and take that side and learn to argue it. So, I just feel like that's the very essence of balance, and it's how we teach our kids. It's so it's just a head scratcher that we can say they're not representing the other sides. It's just not true.
Well, they don't have any presenters that are representing a different perspective, and that was the point that Tony Duncan made on Smerconish's show as well. Of course, he doesn't even identify as a conservative or anything like that, but why conservatives have a perspective. And the Parents of New Trier group, that is a local group, that's New Trier Parents, that you've denigrated and suggest that they are 1% of the opinion on this issue. And I'm not sure that the percentage they represent matters. We're talking about something based on the substantive fairness or lack of fairness of it, not based on 50% plus one making something fair or moral. So the question is, why not expand speech? They didn't talk about eliminating the seminar day. They talked about let's include Bob Woodson or Jason Riley or John McWhorter or Walter Williams or other accomplished African-American men and women in a range of disciplines who have different perspectives on these social justice and economic issues than your presenters do as currently constituted.
Sure, they have said that. And I don't necessarily, again, agree that there's not balance. As far as that goes, I think it's a fair point. And I think a lot of people have said, look, we can get other sides. I think what we're seeing and what we're feeling is, and I've alluded to this on social media and we've kind of talked about it, is, it feels like this is a controversy that is being ginned up by outside influences. And particularly, with all due respect, yourself, that you've injected yourself into this local issue. This Parents of New Trier group says they're growing and organic. And, I don't think it's denigrating of me to say that there's really no evidence that they're anything other than a couple of commentators who've roped in a couple of parents and that they've done a lot of echo chamber appearances on your show
think it's a
and other
big
places.
dictatorship?
That's
no,
not
it's a big
true.
dictatorship when you say if you
No.
can't even opt out of the seminar, though.
Yeah,
and
you
if
can.
You do,
No, you can. You can.
Okay,
Yeah,
and if
absolutely.
so, if you do, you
No,
won't be.
absolutely.
You can't try out for spring sports because
That's not
there's
true
free
either. No,
tryouts
that's not
today.
true either. That's the
this
the
is
Grimmer twins. Your buddies Yasmina and Betsy have been saying that a lot. That was never the case, as far as I know. That was
So
never
if you
the
have a
case.
student, you can opt out.
It's a mandatory seminar.
No, it's a school day. If you go to school, that's
Right.
what you're going to be learning at school. Yes, but it's also mandatory when you go to school and they teach, sex ed or they teach physics or whatever, And I know that the notion of snowflakes is a popular one here. I mean, how delicate do you think our children are that they're going to in one day, be in danger from liberal indoctrination?
No, I don't think
it's absurd.
Well, it's not one day, by the way, because as with the stories we've done, since you're such a fan of North Cook News, you'll note we've talked about Pacific Education Group that has been brought in to train the trainer. Teach the teachers. We've talked about Project Seed that has been brought in and paid taxpayer money by the school district. So there are other groups and there's other programming that goes on throughout the year that's not always directed at children, that's directed at the educators. But I want to get back to the practicum for just a second.
Yeah, but in fairness, I mean, you got yourself, you have a $10 million war chest that you got in the last year from Governor Rauner and from, Richard Uihlein and Todd Ricketts, who's, they're all kind of involved in this in the policy circle. And, you're kind of coming in and injecting that there too. So like to say that there's this big scale indoctrination, I mean, you're getting paid from very wealthy, deep-pocketed, outside, very conservative voices to make this a national issue. And I would suggest the only reason it's been on TV is because, you keep talking about it.
Well, I appreciate the power you think I have.
I
thank
got
you
it.
for the
That's
credit.
a lot of money.
So here's the thing. I know you want to make this about me, but it's not about me. I know you don't want to separate something that is very easily separated. You're talking about a political action committee which supports state legislative candidates, and I'm talking about an issue that I didn't discover, that was discovered by New Trier parents and bubbled up to the surface to become a news story, which we talk about on this news talk program.
And there was
that
so much opposition that there was a school board meeting about it. I mean,
but
you can't put your head in the sand
if
about
you saw
that.
the clips, when they said stand up and they had the banner, they had over 6,000 signatures in support of this. The opposition was basically Dan live tweeting in the front row with Jasmine and Betsy.
That's
I
not
mean,
true.
with all
I got
due
to defend
respect.
my friend in that aspect.
Well, you can.
So,
I mean, that's your job, I know.
So Robert Blackwell
my
and
job.
Tony
Yes,
Duncan are parents. They don't exist. They're not important.
They exist. Absolutely, they exist.
And the people who spoke at the school board meeting that I attended, as you noted, that's not important because it's just critical mass. Is that how you define morality? Whatever 50% plus one say is right? Because back in the day, a majority of the country believed Jim Crow should be the law, and that was wrong.
You're going deep.
So
You're going deep.
Please don't interrupt me, and then you can respond.
Okay.
The idea is very simple. You're making this a popularity contest where I'm trying to talk about the substance of the program. You're making this about me where I'm trying to talk about the substance of the program. So if you could just address the substance of the program, I think it'd be a more productive conversation.
Yeah, sure. But I do have to take issue with just one thing, which is this whole like 50 plus one. I don't know where you're getting that. The overwhelming stats show it's 100 to 1 in favor of
I don't care. I don't care if it's 1,000,000 to 1.
Okay, but let me ask you this. So if you came to my house and I had 100 guests at a party and we all were wanting pizza for dinner and you wanted Chinese, would it be right for you to throw a fit and have a tantrum until we got you Chinese? I mean, you have this big megaphone that you're injecting into this issue.
Excuse me. Your home is not taxpayer funded.
And you don't live in our district. You're not even part of this discussion.
Right. I know. You're the one who wants to make me a part of it. I'm talking about the news story. So, for example, I'd like you to address Monica Trinidad's session on Seminar Day today. We charge genocide.
Yeah.
Where she essentially, and I know from her previous opining on the topic, she refers to Chicago police as urban terrorists who are committing genocide, and is going to discuss with New Trier students the report on police violence that she delivered in Geneva, Switzerland previously. But that is a particular perspective on policing in Chicago, for which there is no response because Monica Trinidad has a very strong viewpoint on it, as evidenced by the fact she refers to police as urban terrorists.
Well, that's true. I mean, and there's fair points to be made.
Thank you.
Yeah, but here's what I would say is, this is one voice, and, she's overstating it maybe, but that's the conversation we seem like we're in nationally, because you guys spend a lot of time with leftist indoctrination and anti-American and anti-free market and all these other kind of things. I mean, the din is just so loud, Dan. I mean, you're a smart guy, and you could really be a force for good, but I don't know why you're so intent on kind of creating controversy. And this is my kid.
Wait a second.
This is our district.
Wait a second. You just conceded the point that you have a speaker addressing how many ever thousand New Trier students that refers to police as urban terrorists.
Yeah.
And there's no other side presented because she's leading the practicum, and you're suggesting that I'm ginning up controversy. You concede the point that it's a national discussion topic.
Yeah.
So then why not bring somebody in? Maybe from the police department, from Chicago Police.
I think they have actually a Chicago police officer that's coming in.
Maybe
that's someone who's
well, I know what you think and what is actually true. Maybe Heather McDonald, who's written the book War on Cops. Why not another perspective? See, the thing that's fascinating to me about it is if somebody is unwilling to listen to the argument of the other side, they just want to present their argument in a silo. It seems to me that is evidence that they're not so confident of their position. And that's what this Seminar Day, which is all white privilege and leftist politics, screams.
Well, why are you having it in the first place? I mean, I heard from a New Trier parent that you're having it because white kids wanted to be around more minorities. They didn't know what it was like to be down with the struggle, or because they don't have African Americans living among them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Amy. I mean, we live in a very affluent, overwhelmingly white part of the country, and, they don't have a lot of interaction on a daily basis. But also, systemic racism exists, and I think this is a big thing that the opposition has tried to, inject into this, which is that there's no such thing as systemic racism. It's a political thing to say that, people of color have really bad and adverse experiences with the criminal justice system, with the job market, with education in this country, with all of those things. So for us to, act like that's not the case, which, Yasmina and Betsy and, these very vocal opponents say. I was on WTTW with the other night, and she told me I was stuck in some weird circle because I suggested systemic racism exists.
Racism exists. In fact, Tony Duncan, the black New Trier parent we paid at the start of this segment, has suggested that his kids have suffered instances of racist conduct, been victims of racist conduct in New Trier.
So I'm sure.
I can see that it exists.
Especially nowadays.
Especially now, why?
Well, the whole racial tone in this country has gotten very scary and very aggressive, and we've had a lot of anecdotal evidence of since November of emboldened people pushing all kinds of crazy theories.
Yeah. So
saying things.
So there's no issue that racism doesn't exist, but I go back again to ask why not more speech as opposed to constricting speech. Why not more participants? Why not extend the parameters of discussion on the Seminar Day?
I would say that I think that's a fair point, quite honestly. I do. And I think that that's a discussion that people of good faith can have. But I would also submit with, all due respect, that if there's, any person in the state of Illinois that we don't need more speech from on this issue, it would probably be you, Dan.
Well, I know, because you don't like my speech, and that's fine. The cure for speech you don't like is more speech, as Brandeis said. It just doesn't seem to be the opinion of New Trier. I mean, I like more speech. That's why I have you in studio right now.
And I appreciate that. I really do. But I just feel like, I don't know why we have a statewide and a national controversy raging when, I live in New Trier. My kids are there. I don't want to be, subject to this. I don't want us to be looked like the bad, white people who are out of touch or snowflakes or whatever. These are like constant attacks on our community where there's no dissension. And it all seems to be coming out of East Wilmette and this room. And it's not anywhere else bipartisan New Trier.
Well,
Township.
that's not true. That's
Well,
just
it
that's
is.
just spec.
I
mean,
live there.
I can name names, but I'm not going to name names because
Okay.
part of it is, and
Yeah,
if
they're
you,
intimidated and terrified. I know, except for
Well-
the ones that come on
No,
your
they
show
don't
and
wanna
write
be
op-eds or
harassed.
wire
They
points.
don't want to be harassed.
yeah. I mean, what about that? So bullying only exists in one direction. If bullying is a real thing, you don't think people that share my perspective fear reprisals for their children? Or fear, reprisals within social circles on the North Shore? Does bullying go in only one direction? Because you seem to be very concerned about it one way and not concerned about it at all when it comes to people who are afraid that they represent a minority viewpoint and are going to be ostracized or their kids are going to suffer negative impacts if they speak out.
I guess I just don't accept the premise that our, educators at New Trier, which is one of the best schools in the country, would single out or bully any child who is either, speaking his parents' opinions or her parents' opinions or has a differing view. I feel that's a specious claim.
Okay. So
I've got some concerns about your Kaepernick seminar that's going, because you're going to pit students against each other and have them look at each other and argue.
That's what we're doing,
but
right?
there's
This is
some
a free exchange of
ramifications
ideas.
those
This is
beliefs. I mean,
fine.
how they feel. I think, just as a parent, I think that's dangerous, fraught with danger.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. You may be right.
Why did you? What's the nature of your Kickstarter campaign? You're trying to raise $15,000 or as much as $25,000 to do what?
Yes, sir. I believe, as I've said here, and I appreciate you giving me a chance to say it, that this is a non-local controversy that has been turned into a national and statewide controversy by outside elements. And then there is a kind of group within our district that is, below the radar, likes to operate below the radar, that is working to influence and attack public education. And I really think this is something we see nationwide. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, we see it from the new Secretary of Education all the way down. And, you can say it's tinfoil hat or a conspiracy theory, but it's all it is that people don't have attention spans to sit down and take the 45 minutes or an hour to look at this and say, this is really what's going on. They can hear a soundbite from you and it'll move the goalposts a little bit, and they'll think, well, Prof's so upset about this and angry, there must be some point there. He's a good guy. He's a smart guy. You know what I mean? But the reality of it is something very, very different. And there's that we've had deep-pocketed interests like yourself who have a vested interest in destroying public education, which you've repeatedly, talked about. The evidence is there.
Wait, okay, just stop. I mean, I can only handle so many talking points at once. One is I don't want to destroy public education, number one. Number two, I haven't spent a dime on this initiative, and nobody has spent a dime on it. This is all people organizing, consistent with the Burkean platoons of democracy, to stand up for their perspective.
Do you know who built their website? Because they got a really fancy professional website. Somebody spent a dime on that, but they won't talk.
I don't know who built their website.
You didn't help them with that?
I did not. I have not spent a dime. This is all silliness. But by the way, the other groups that have spent a dime, in addition to New Trier taxpayers, to bring in national organizations like Project Seed, like Pacific Education Group, and why this is relevant not just to New Trier is because other school districts are employing these same people. In addition to Stand for Children, which is a huge national organization, $17 million budget last year, and they spent money organizing this petition drive that was presented by Mimi Rodman at the school board meeting. So, the kind of whole there's moneyed interest behind this and there's money interest behind that. It's just a smokescreen because you don't want to kind of talk about the substance and the fundamental issue, the fundamental grievance of those who oppose the seminar as currently constituted is just we want more diversity of intellect, more diversity of position and viewpoint than is presented in the seminar. And everything has to be whipped into politics, as you're doing. I'm trying to destroy public education. The Secretary of Education's a bad person. Everybody who opposes me is a bad person.
I said she's trying to destroy public education.
Okay.
She's probably a good person. You seem like a nice guy.
Well, thank you very much.
But that's why I think people should fund my Kickstarter, because I think what I'll show is the actual story here, which is, not being told here. I mean, we've never seen, that I know of, anyone in my 30 years as a Chicagoan inject themselves into a local municipal issue with big money behind them the way you have on this issue since you were working for Cicero.
You keep saying the same thing. You keep saying the same thing. I mean, you can vilify me as much as you want.
I'm not vilifying you, Dan. I'm telling you this is the truth. This is the reality.
You can make this as much about my biography as you want. It just doesn't get you away from the sum and substance of the seminar.
Do you think there's this much risk?
Opposition to it.
How many hours have you spent talking about this? You think there's so much risk in this one day and this handful of seminars these kids will do that you need to, democracy is under attack and you have to be the champion of, conservative principles?
Well, Paul, since you're so good at connecting dots that don't exist, why try to connect some that do? I just mentioned the outside consultants that are employed by this district, employed by New Trier, have been employed by other districts too. Stand for Illinois Children is a national organization. So there are elements that are not limited to New Trier. This is a microcosm of a larger issue and a larger discussion about K through 12 education and what's going on in schools. It just happens because of New Trier's national standing and because of its state standing. This is a good opportunity to talk about all of these issues that extend well beyond the corporate boundaries of New Trier Township High School.
Yeah, I agree. But I think it's more, honestly, than education. I think it's about red mapping, and it's about the way to surreptitiously get conservative candidates stuck into these municipal districts and politicize everything so that, you guys can take over everything.
Okay, it's the vast right-wing conspiracy. All right, Paul Traynor, New Trier parent, the father of a sophomore at New Trier High School. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time. We'll appreciate you coming in studio. Enjoy the discussion.
All right, thanks, Dan.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Paul.